Okay, so let's look at this data. The number of text messages used per month for 52 individuals were recorded and listed. We're going to create a group frequency distribution for this data. Now, the first thing you want to do is to try and determine which one are the smallest numbers and which one is the largest number of our data. So if I go through my list very carefully, it looks like 130 is the smallest and 399 is the largest. So when creating a group frequency distribution, we tend to start at the lowest number. Now, you don't have to start at the lowest number. I could start at 100, for example. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and start at the lowest number of text messages. And we're going to start it off at 130. Now, generally, we want to figure out some sort of distance to cover. You can kind of think of it as distance for our groups. Now, what that's called is called the class width. Now, there are some systematic ways to figure out a class width size. Generally, it's based on how big the numbers are. And it looks like here we're going from 100 to 400-ish about. And that would be a nice way, if we're going from 100 to 400, that's a total of 300 as our range. And if I have 300 in the range, it probably makes sense if I wanted to group it up into 5 or 6 groups that each of the widths are about 50 responses or 50 text messages in this sense. So I'm going to say a 50 texts is the class width. So that means the number of texts would start off at 130, the next group would start at 180, then 230, then 280, then 330, and then 380. That would be the starts. The ends for each of these: 179, 229, 279, 329, and 379, and 429. And I'm going to count up the number of responses as I go through. So if I look through for the 130 to 179, it looks like I've only got one, the 130, as counting for that group of frequencies from 130 to 179. Let's count up the 180 to 229. We've got one at 189. We've got one at 207. Let's see, there should be another one in here, 222 right there. And that gives us 3 responses. If I look at the next group, 230 to 279, let's see, 230 to 279. So 230 was 1, 279, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's see, I'm missing one. I should have 6 of them. I might be missing one somewhere, but we'll just look for it. Oh, there it is. Found it, 266. There we go. All right, and then I'm going to actually count the last group because we should have only 6 in that last group. And in fact, if I go through the rest of them, I should have 20 and 16 independently. I'm not going to go through the whole process of marking each of them off. It does take a while. It is a little bit tricky sometimes if you've got a bunch of numbers. Thank goodness for Excel. So then this would be our group frequency distribution for this data. Now, we can represent this data and this information in a bunch of different ways. We could create a pie chart. That's actually something that a lot of people are used to. As a statistician, pie charts are not necessarily the greatest way to display data, especially for someone like me if we're trying to do this by hand and I try and make a circle and I can't even barely make a circle right. So generally pie charts are okay if you only have one or two categories to deal with. Actually, not more than one, like 2, 3, or 4 categories. The more categories that you have, the more groups that you have, the more complicated the pie chart can be. I've seen pie charts that'll have 20 different categories on them. One of the categories takes up almost the entire circle, and then we have 19 little itty bitty slivers on the other side. That doesn't really help visualize the data any better. So pie charts, they're okay. You can use them from time to time. The ones that we tend to talk about most are bar charts and histograms. Now, a bar chart and a histogram are going to look very similar, but the key difference between a bar chart and a histogram is all about the data. So a bar chart is where we're talking about categories like yes, no, freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, those sort of categorical variable data where I can put something into a category. And the key thing is a category cannot be averaged. So if I ask you what class rank are you and you say freshman, and then another person says sophomore, another person says junior and senior, and I say, okay, what's the average class ranking? And you're like, how do I average freshman plus sophomore plus junior plus senior? That doesn't make much sense. Those are for bar charts where we just literally show the distribution of the categories. A histogram, like this one, and they look almost identical, except for histograms, we're talking about numerical data, something that I could actually take an average of. So here, the following histogram displays data collected from delivery truck drivers. They were asked to record their wait times when an address had a closed entrance gate. So we said, hey, how long did you have to wait whenever you're trying to go somewhere and the gate's closed and you have to like call someone up and say, hey, can you open the gate? I need to drop your stuff off. That's the response that they said. They said, how long does it take for them to actually get in there and get to their delivery site? And it looks like, if we look very carefully, that these are already in grouped frequencies. 0 to 59 seconds, 60 to 119, 120 to 129. So really, each of these represent 1 minute, 2 minute, 3 minute, 4 minute, 5 minute, 6 minute, 7 minute, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 minutes. Okay? That's not the height of them. I'm just saying that this is like the way you can think about it. Did they get in within the first minute or the second minute or the third minute or the fourth minute? And they said yes or no. Okay, so we actually calculate, we took their times and grouped them up and created this histogram based off of it. So let's first determine approximately how many truck drivers were in this survey. So what we would need to do is look at the height of each of these bars and estimate what they are. Now this, I've got it written down exactly on the next slide, but this looks like it's about 15 maybe. This looks like it's about 48. This one looks like maybe 27, 28, something like that. This one looks like 19 maybe. And so you look at the heights of each of these bars and that will tell you how many times, how frequent that particular group was counted into it. So I already did this for us on the next page. So we went ahead and figured out the heights for each of these bars and listed them out. This created our frequency distribution, and we totaled it up to 214 people who responded to this survey. Okay. How many different drivers waited between 60 and 180 seconds? So I'm looking up here at either these two bar charts, the 60 to 180, or I can add up these two numbers. So 48 plus 28, we've got 76 approximately had to wait between 1 minute and what, 3 minutes? How many drivers waited more than 7 minutes? So 7 minutes would be the 420 seconds and on. So I would add up the 15 plus 9 plus 8 plus 13 plus 19 plus 14 plus 12 plus 5. And I got 95 drivers had to wait more than 7 minutes. Now, is it accurate to say that about half the drivers had to wait more than 420 seconds? Well, the amount of drivers that waited more than 7 minutes was 95, and that's out of 241 total responses. So 95 divided by 241 is 39.42%. I would not say that half the drivers had to wait more than 20 seconds. About 40% of the drivers had to wait more than had to wait more than 420 seconds. So that's how to interpret a histogram. There's a couple of other different charts in the text, like a line chart. Those are generally used whenever you're looking at things changing over time. So say, for example, and this is actually connecting to the data that I collect. Say in 2015 to 16 school year, we had the people who got between an A and a C in the class were 50, and the total of students were, say, 75. And then we have a 2016 to 2017, and say we had 70 out of a total of 850. And say 2017 to 2018, we had, say, 80 out of 90. And so a line chart generally is used when there is time on the bottom scale. And so from 2015 to 2016, so that's our 15 to 16 year, and then 16 to 17 year, and then 17 to 18 year. And we would have either 100% up here passing the class or 0% down at the bottom. And I would take 50 divided by 75 to get 66%. And I go about, say, there's the first data point. And it is literally a point on the graph and not a bar. And then I'll do that for the 16 to 17. So I have 70 divided by 85. That got me an 82%, 82.35%. And so then if that's about half of it is about maybe here. So then our point for, I'm going to sort of mark these off a little bit better. See a little better. And so then at 16 through 17, we had an 82.35% pass rate. And then 80 divided by 90 should give me 88%. So that is just a little bit better. And so then over here, we have about a little bit above, and then we would connect them. We're actually seeing that now with how the infection rates of the virus going around. You look at the days, the sequential days, and you can create a line graph. And this represents that curve that people have been talking about trying to suppress the curve or flatten the curve. That's what we're talking about. Literally taking in this day-by-day data, plotting it against a line plot, and hoping that that curve starts to go down, at least in the case of the virus. We want this one, since we're talking about pass rates, to go up. So there's a bunch of different charts. If you have any questions, just let me know.